still can't sleep whenever it rains at night. Most people love the sound of rain. Feels peaceful, relaxing, almost comforting. But after what happened that night, the sound of rain makes my heart race. Because that night, I learned something terrifying. Sometimes when you think you're alone in your house, you're not. It happened about 2 years ago. My name is Hamza, and at the time I had just moved into a small rented house on the edge of the city. The rent was cheap, almost suspiciously cheap, but I didn't ask too many questions. The house was old. Not abandoned old, but the kind of old where the walls seemed to hold secrets. When I first moved in, the neighbor next door said something strange to me. He looked at the house, then at me, and said quietly, "People don't usually stay in that house very long." Then he just walked away. I laughed it off. At the time, I didn't believe in ghosts, spirits, or anything supernatural. But that belief didn't last very long. That night, the storm started around 10 p.m. Heavy rain slammed against the roof like thousands of tiny fingers tapping all at once. Wind howled through the trees outside. Every few minutes lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the entire neighborhood for a split second. And then, darkness again. The power had already gone out twice. I was in the kitchen making tea when suddenly, click, everything went black. The entire house fell silent except for the rain. I sighed and turned on the flashlight on my phone. "Great," I muttered. "Perfect timing." I walked into the living room and sat down on the couch, waiting for the electricity to come back. The rain kept getting louder. The wind shook the windows. The whole house creaked like it was slowly breathing. Then I heard it. Thud. I froze. The sound came from upstairs. I slowly lifted my head. The upper floor of the house was completely empty. I never even used it. There were just 2 dusty rooms and an old storage area. Nobody could be up there. At least, that's what I thought. I listened carefully. The rain kept falling. The wind kept howling. For a moment, everything seemed normal again. Then it happened again. Thud, thud, thud. This time it sounded like footsteps. Slow, heavy, walking across the upstairs floor. My chest tightened. My brain tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe the wind knocked something over. Maybe a loose board moved. Maybe an animal got inside. But deep down, something felt wrong. Very wrong. I grabbed a flashlight and slowly walked toward the staircase. The wooden steps creaked with every step I took. Creak, creak, creak. Halfway up the stairs. Bang! Something slammed loudly upstairs. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Now I was sure. Someone was up there. Maybe a thief broke in through a window. My heart was pounding as I reached the top step. The hallway upstairs was dark, cold, and strangely quiet. One of the doors at the end of the hall was slightly open. I was certain I had closed it earlier. I slowly pushed the door open. The hinges groaned loudly. Inside the room, there was nothing, just dust, old furniture, broken boxes, no person, no movement, nothing. I scanned the entire room with my flashlight. Empty. I let out a nervous laugh. "See," I whispered to myself. "You're just being paranoid." Feeling a little embarrassed, I turned around and headed back downstairs. But the moment I stepped into the living room again, I stopped dead in my tracks. Because something was wrong. Very wrong. Someone was sitting on the couch, right where I had been sitting before. I couldn't see clearly in the darkness, but there was definitely a shape there. A dark figure, just sitting, not moving, watching. My entire body went cold. Slowly, I raised my flashlight and pointed it toward the couch. The beam of light hit the cushions, and instantly, the figure disappeared. The couch was empty, completely empty. I stared at it, confused. My brain tried to convince me I imagined it, but I knew what I saw. There was someone sitting there. I was sure of it. Then suddenly, I felt something behind me, a cold breath near my ear, and a whisper, soft, right next to my head. "You came back." I spun around instantly, but there was no one there. No one, just darkness, and the sound of rain. That's when I realized something horrifying. The footsteps I heard earlier weren't upstairs. They started upstairs and followed me down, because whatever was inside that house with me that night was now standing somewhere in the same room, watching, waiting, and I was completely alone. Or at least, I thought I was. until I heard the footsteps again. Right behind me. The footsteps behind me stopped. Not slowly, not fading away. They stopped instantly, like whatever was walking behind me had suddenly realized that I heard it. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My entire body felt frozen. The rain outside kept pounding against the roof, but inside the house, it was dead silent. Slowly, I turned around. Nothing. The living room was empty. The couch was empty. The hallway was empty. But the feeling didn't go away. That feeling when you know someone is watching you, even though you can't see them. My heart was beating so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I tried to laugh it off again. Okay. That's enough, I said out loud. Maybe I'm just tired. But the moment the words left my mouth, something upstairs moved again. Scrape. It sounded like a chair dragging across the floor. My stomach dropped. I had just come from upstairs. I had checked every room. There was nobody there. And yet, something was definitely moving. I slowly walked toward the stairs again. Every instinct in my body was telling me not to. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially on a night like that. I climbed the stairs slowly. Creak, creak, creak. When I reached the top, the hallway felt colder than before. Much colder. The door at the end of the hallway was now fully open. I was sure it had been half closed earlier. My flashlight beam shook slightly as I pointed it inside. The room looked the same. Dust, old boxes, broken furniture. But one thing had changed. The old wooden chair in the corner was now in the middle of the room. My throat went dry. I knew for a fact that chair wasn't there before. I had looked right at that spot earlier. Something had moved it, but there was no one in the room. I stepped inside slowly. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet. The air felt thick, heavy. Then suddenly, slam! The door behind me shut violently. I jumped and spun around. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't move. The door was stuck. My breathing started getting faster. "Hello!" I shouted. "Is someone there?" No answer. Only the rain. Then I heard something else. A sound coming from behind me. Very quiet. Very slow. Breathing. Someone was breathing inside the room with me. I turned around slowly. My flashlight scanned the dark corners. The boxes. The broken shelves. The chair. Then the light stopped. Because someone was sitting in the chair. Person. Just sitting there. Head slightly tilted down. Completely still. My brain refused to understand what I was seeing. Because I had looked at that chair only seconds earlier. And it was empty. My hand started shaking as I pointed the flashlight directly at the figure. The light revealed something that made my blood run cold. The figure was soaked, like it had just walked through heavy rain. Water was dripping slowly onto the floor. But the worst part was the face. Because the face looked exactly like mine. Same hair, same clothes, same face. It was me, or something that looked exactly like me. The thing slowly lifted its head, and then it smiled. But the smile was wrong. Too wide, too unnatural. Then it spoke. And the voice was my voice. "You shouldn't have come back upstairs." My legs felt weak. I stumbled backward. The thing in the chair slowly stood up. Every movement it made looked slightly delayed, like it was copying me. Then it took a step toward me. I rushed to the door and pulled again. Still locked. "What are you?" I shouted. The thing didn't answer. It just kept walking toward me. Slowly. Then suddenly, the power came back. All the lights in the house turned on at once. The room was filled with bright light. And the chair was empty again. No figure. No water on the floor. Nothing. The door handle suddenly turned easily in my hand. I opened the door and ran downstairs as fast as I could. I grabbed my keys and ran outside into the rain. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I drove away without even looking back. I never went back to that house again. The next morning, I returned with the landlord to collect my things. Everything looked normal. The upstairs room was empty. The chair was back in the corner, exactly where it originally was. The landlord looked confused when I told him what happened. Then he said something that made my stomach twist. "You're not the first tenant who left suddenly." I asked him what he meant. He hesitated for a moment. Then he said quietly, "The man who lived here before you used to say he kept seeing himself in the house. A copy of himself. Watching him. And one night during a storm, he disappeared. Nobody ever found him. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night when it rains. And every now and then, I hear footsteps in my hallway. Slow, heavy, getting closer to my bedroom door. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I can't help but wonder something. What if the thing I saw that night didn't disappear? What if it followed me home? It was exactly 2:17 a.m. when someone knocked on my door. Not pounded, not banged, just 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Each knock echoed through my house like someone tapping directly on my nerves. And the strange part was, no one should have been outside. That night, a violent storm had completely flooded the road in front of my house. The rain had been pouring nonstop for hours. Thunder kept shaking the entire neighborhood, and the wind was so strong it bent the trees sideways. Even if someone wanted to come to my house that night, they probably couldn't. And yet, someone was knocking. I live alone in a small house at the edge of town. The nearest neighbor is almost half a mile away. At night, the area gets extremely quiet. No traffic. No pedestrians. Just long, empty roads and the occasional sound of wind through the trees. Normally, I like the quiet, but that night, the quiet felt different. Uncomfortable, like the storm had brought something with it. I had been sitting on the couch watching an old movie when the power suddenly went out. The entire house dropped into darkness. The TV shut off. The fan stopped spinning. And the only sound left was the rain hammering against the windows. For a moment, I just sat there in the dark. Then I sighed and reached for my phone. The flashlight clicked on, casting a pale white circle across the living room. Great, I muttered. The storm must have knocked out the electricity again. That happens sometimes in this area. I stood up and was about to head toward the kitchen to grab a candle when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. The sound had come from the front door. At first I thought maybe it was the wind hitting something against the house. But the sound came again. Exactly the same pattern, 3 knocks. Slow, precise, intentional. Knock, knock, knock. Someone was definitely there. My first thought was that maybe someone's car had broken down in the storm. Maybe someone needed help. It wouldn't be the first time something like that happened on this road. Still, something about the timing made my stomach feel uneasy.
2:17 a.m.
In the middle of a thunderstorm, with flooded roads, who would walk all the way out here at this hour? I grabbed my phone tighter and slowly walked toward the door. The wooden floor creaked under my feet. My heartbeat was getting faster with every step. When I reached the door, I leaned forward and looked through the peephole. The porch light was off because the electricity was gone, but lightning flashed outside just as I looked. For a split second, the entire porch lit up, and I saw nothing. The porch was empty. Rain poured down in sheets. Water ran off the roof like a waterfall, but there was no one standing there.
No shadow.
No movement. No person. I blinked and looked again. Still nothing. I stepped back from the door, confused. Maybe whoever it was had already left. Maybe they realized no one was answering. But then, the knocking started again. This time it wasn't at the front door. It came from the back of the house. Knock, knock, knock. My heart dropped. The back door led to a narrow alley behind my house. There was no way someone could walk from the front porch to the back door that quickly. Not in that storm. Not without me hearing footsteps on the gravel. Unless they had already been there. I slowly walked toward the kitchen. The knocking started again. Louder this time. More desperate. Bang, bang, bang. I stopped a few feet away from the door. The handle rattled slightly as the wind pushed against it. Rain pounded the back window. Who's there? I shouted. The banging stopped instantly. The house became silent again. Then I heard a voice. Soft, weak, barely louder than a whisper. Please, let me in. It sounded like a woman. She sounded cold, shivering, terrified. For a moment my fear faded and concern replaced it. Maybe someone really needed help. Maybe someone got stranded in the storm. I moved a little closer to the door. Who are you? I asked. No answer, just the sound of rain. Then the voice spoke again, even softer this time. Please.
I'm freezing.
The voice sounded so fragile that it made my chest tighten. But something about it still felt wrong. I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way the words came out. Slow, almost unnatural, like someone repeating lines they had memorized. I reached toward the door handle. My fingers were only inches away when my phone vibrated in my hand. The sudden buzz made me jump. It was a weather emergency alert. I opened the notification. The message read, "Warning. Residents are advised to remain indoors. A prisoner escaped from a county transport vehicle during the storm. Authorities believe the suspect may attempt to enter nearby homes." My stomach twisted. Slowly, very slowly, I looked back at the door. Rainwater was dripping underneath the frame. The woman's voice spoke again, but this time, it sounded slightly different, deeper, strained, like someone struggling to imitate a woman's voice. "Why aren't you opening the door?" A chill ran down my spine. I took a step back. The voice changed again. Now it sounded impatient, angry. "Open the door." The handle slowly started to turn. From the outside, I stared at it in horror. The handle moved halfway down, then stopped. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then I heard something that made my blood freeze. A laugh. Low, raspy. Not a woman's laugh. A man's. Right outside the door. Then the voice whispered one last thing. "Smart choice." For the next hour, I sat on the couch with a kitchen knife in my hand. The storm continued outside. Thunder shook the house, but the knocking never returned. Eventually, the power came back on around 4 a.m. When the sun started rising, I finally opened the door. The porch was empty. The alley behind the house was empty. But in the mud, I saw footprints. Large footprints. They went right up to the door, then stopped. Like whoever had been standing there had simply vanished. Later that day, the police released a report. The escaped prisoner had been captured about 2 miles away. When they arrested him, he had been knocking on random houses all night trying to get inside, pretending to be someone who needed help, using different voices, even pretending to be a woman. But what still keeps me awake at night is something the officer said before he left. He looked at the footprints by my door and frowned. Then he said, "These prints are too big." I asked what he meant, and he replied quietly, "The man we caught was wearing shoes 3 sizes smaller than this." The call came at 1:43 a.m. That alone wasn't unusual. What made it strange was what the voice on the other end said. The first thing she whispered was, "Please don't hang up. He's inside the building." At the time, I thought it was just a prank call. But 10 minutes later, I realized something horrifying. The girl on the phone wasn't the one I needed to worry about. 3 years ago, I worked as a night security guard for a small logistics company. The job was simple. Stay in the office, watch the cameras, answer calls if someone needed to enter the building. The warehouse complex was located on the far edge of the industrial district. During the day, it was busy with trucks and workers. But at night, the entire area felt abandoned. Empty roads, dark warehouses, broken streetlights, and on stormy nights like that one, felt like the entire world had disappeared. That night, a heavy storm had rolled into the city around midnight. Rain pounded against the metal roof of the warehouse like 1,000 drums. Thunder echoed across the empty streets. Around 1:30 a.m., the power went out in several nearby buildings. Our office still had electricity because of the backup generator, but most of the lights outside were completely dark. The security office was a small room with a desk, several monitors, and a phone connected to the company's internal line. Normally, the cameras showed empty hallways and quiet storage areas. Nothing ever happened, which is why when the phone suddenly rang at 1:43 a.m., it immediately caught my attention. The sound felt strangely loud in the quiet office. I picked up the receiver. "Security office," I said. For a moment, there was no response, just silence. Then I heard breathing, slow, uneven breathing. "Hello," I said again. The breathing continued. Then finally a voice whispered, "Is someone there?" It sounded like a young girl, maybe 15 or 16 years old. Her voice was trembling. "Yes," I replied. "Who is this?" Another pause. Then she whispered something that made me sit up straight.
"I'm hiding."
A cold feeling spread through my chest. "Hiding from who?" I asked. The girl didn't answer right away. Instead, I heard something else through the phone. A faint creaking sound. like a door slowly opening somewhere near her. Then she whispered, "From the man outside." I stood up from my chair and looked toward the office window. The parking lot outside was almost completely dark. Rain blurred the glass so badly that it was hard to see anything clearly. But as far as I could tell, there was no one out there. "No one's outside," I said. The girl spoke quickly. "He was. Then he came inside." My heart skipped. "That's impossible," I said. "This building only has one entrance. I would have seen someone." The girl started breathing faster. "He's looking for me." Her voice sounded terrified. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped toward the door. "Where are you?" I asked. "I'm in the building," she whispered. My stomach dropped, because that meant one thing. If she was telling the truth, then someone had entered the warehouse without being seen. I walked back to the desk and checked the security cameras. The monitors showed 6 different views of the building. The front entrance, 2 hallways, the loading dock, the storage floor, and the outside parking lot. All of them were empty. No movement. No people. "You're sure you're inside this building?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered. "He's walking around." "Where exactly are you?" I asked. "I'm hiding behind some boxes," she said. "In the big room." That meant the main warehouse floor, the largest room in the entire building. A massive dark space filled with tall shelves and storage crates. If someone was hiding there, it would be almost impossible to see them on camera. Then she whispered something else, something that made my skin crawl. "He's getting closer." I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the hallway outside my office. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly. The storm outside made the power unstable. "Stay on the phone," I told her. "Don't move." "Okay," she whispered. I stepped into the hallway and listened. At first all I could hear was the rain hitting the roof. Then, something else. A sound echoing from deeper inside the warehouse. Footsteps. Slow footsteps. But they sounded strange. Not like normal footsteps. More like someone dragging wet shoes across concrete. Step, drag, step, drag. My heartbeat sped up. "Do you hear that?" I whispered into the phone. "Yes," the girl said quietly. "That's him." I stopped walking. The footsteps continued somewhere in the darkness ahead. Then suddenly, they stopped. Complete silence. The girl's voice came through the phone again, barely audible. "He's near you now." A chill ran down my spine. I turned the corner toward the main warehouse door. The huge metal door stood slightly open, which was strange. I was sure it had been closed earlier. I slowly pushed it open. The massive room beyond was almost completely dark. Only a few emergency lights glowed faintly near the ceiling. Tall shelves stretched across the warehouse like rows of black walls. "Where are you?" I whispered into the phone. "Near the back," she said. "Behind the tall crates." I stepped inside the warehouse. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Dust floated in the air. The entire place felt cold and empty. Then suddenly, the girl spoke again. But her voice sounded confused now. "Wait!" He stopped moving. I froze. "What do you mean?" Her voice shook. "He's not looking for me anymore." My stomach tightened. "Then what is he doing?" There was a long pause. Then she whispered something that made my blood run cold. "He's walking toward your office." I turned around instantly. The hallway behind me was empty. But then, I heard footsteps again.
Wet footsteps.
Coming from behind me now. Slow. Heavy. Moving down the hallway toward the security office. The girl suddenly gasped on the phone. "Oh no." "What?" I asked. Her voice was trembling. "I think I made a mistake." "What mistake?" A few seconds passed before she answered. Then she whispered the most terrifying words I had ever heard. The man I was hiding from was already inside the warehouse. My heart stopped. "Then who's walking to my office?" Her voice broke as she answered. "I think that's me." And at that exact moment, the breathing on the phone suddenly stopped. But I heard breathing again, right behind me. Slow, cold, too close. I turned around slowly, and in the darkness of the warehouse, I saw someone standing there, holding a phone, smiling.